Hi, this is Terry Edwards here from Make More Placements. We're the guys that recruitment and search business owners come to. They want to generate more leads and make more placements. And a few years ago, I watched a series called The Last Dance. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a series featuring exclusive footage from the film crew that had all access to the Bulls basketball team, as well as interviews with some of the key personalities in that team, including the likes of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman and Steve Kerr. Michael Jordan, by the way, was considered one of the greatest players of all time. And something he said was, to succeed, you must learn from failure. Here's a quote from Michael Jordan. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game's winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed. That's from Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. As you listen to that quote, you would never think that Michael Jordan could succeed at all. How can somebody who admitted failing so many times become such an incredible, successful athlete and business person and hero to so many people? Someone who, by the way, wasn't accepted into his varsity team because he was deemed too short. The key to that is that in the last sentence, I've failed over and over again. For many people, the first sting of failure is enough to put them off for life. Oh, well, it wasn't meant to be, we tell ourselves, or I gave it a go and it wasn't enough. Then we look for the next shiny toy to go after. But here's what I've discovered about highly successful people, not only in business, but in sports and everything else. They use failure as a learning lesson. See, for many of us, success is the only motivator. So if you don't get the success, then you're not going to be motivated. For the top billers in the recruitment industry, for the likes of Michael Jordan, the motivator is failure, because they acknowledge that they have to fail before they can win. Failure was a learning lesson to do better next time. For some, failure is a stepping stone on the ladder to achievement. Another example would be Colonel Saunders. Here's an individual that failed and failed again with his chicken recipe, and the franchise KFC. But here's what's interesting. He offered that recipe over 1,000 times, and 1,000 times he rejected. He wasn't accepted until the 1,010th time. What would you do if you were rejected 1,000 times? Would you keep going? Or Walt Disney. Walt Disney is perhaps the most iconic entertainment company to ever existed, the Walt Disney Company. And the likes of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck are loved all over the world. But the founder, Walt, was deemed a failure. In fact, and if you know this, he was fired from a newspaper, the Missouri newspaper, for not being creative enough. That's right, Walt Disney was fired for not being creative enough. It seems unbelievable. Not only that, he had other businesses before the Walt Disney business, which went bust. Yes, Walt Disney went bankrupt before he found success. What about J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series? She was a single mother, unemployed and on welfare. And like many first-time authors, she really struggled to get the Harry Potter novels published. It was rejected by almost every major publisher in the UK, until a small publisher by the name of Bloomsbury reluctantly agreed to publish it, but only after the 8-year-old daughter of the chairman had read the first chapter and demanded the rest of the book after reading it. Now J.K. Rowling is a household name and one of the highest paid authors in the world. And she, in one of her talks at a graduation ceremony, she talks about simply because failure is meant to strip away the non-essentials. She said, I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything that I was and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to her. Think about that. How often have you done that? She goes on to say that failure gave her inner security that she never had previously. And she felt herself a bit of a failure because she didn't have the academic qualifications. She thought that was maybe why she couldn't get her books published. What stories are you saying about yourself that you believe stopping you right now? We've worked with recruitment. I worked with a particular lady who was doing about 100,000 a year. All the work was on contingent and she was charging 10%. To use her exact words were, Terry, I'm working my butt off for a pittance, quite frankly, because most of the job orders she was working on, she wasn't filling. And when she did fill them, she'd get a mere 10%. And it was hard work. And she said, quite honestly, I've fallen out of love with recruitment and all the hassle that goes with it. This same person is now billing 500,000 a year with just her and her husband. But she learned from the failures. We shared with her what she could do even better to ensure her success. Then there was George. He was based in the USA. He had 19 years of recruitment experience in his niche. He was a great recruiter. He knew how to find difficult to find candidates. His challenge was he just couldn't get meetings with hiring managers in his niche. And he ended up talking to in-house management teams or HR teams and just couldn't get to the decision maker. George now has a process where he gets 10 to 15 meetings a month, every single month. Now, they're just a few examples of people that have learned from a failure. So can you, if you're open to it. See, failure is fundamental to our growth. We can learn from what went wrong and what we then know what we should avoid doing. To quote Bill Gates, success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. Look, if you would like to discover more, reach out to us and jump on a call with one of our team and discover what perhaps isn't working well for you and what you can do instead. It doesn't have to be that way. Thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, take care, take action, be relentless.